Serious, married couples, what is the one thing you regret most about your wedding? A receiving line. We put my mother-in-law in charge of everything because we were getting married in my husband's hometown, but we were in school in a different state. She wanted a receiving line and we didn't fight her on it. Turns out she invited the entire city. We didn't get to eat the catered food, didn't get to dance, didn't even get to cut our cake. They started serving and eating our cake because we were stuck in the foyer of the reception hall shaking hands with hundreds of people we didn't know and would never meet again. I cannot stress enough, just don't do a receiving line. Focusing way too much on small details. Nobody cares what color the napkins are. It was my wedding and I don't remember what freaking color they were. Get napkins. Move on. No need to stress about that stuff. I remember early in the process telling my wife to be that if anyone is talking about the chair covers, napkins or plates after the wedding, then the wedding must have sucked. Relax. I was nervous and had no appetite. So much beautiful food wasted. This was me. I was also the one who insisted on the good catered food and then I barely ate any of it. I was so terrified of doing the wedding dance in front of everyone. Much more nervous about that than I was for the actual ceremony. That we chose December in Iowa to have it. Turned out there was a blizzard and 50% of the people couldn't make it. We got married in Hawaii with a very small group of friends and family. The wedding itself was marvelously low-key, very sweet and perfect for us. We just stuck around in Hawaii for the honeymoon. But my family was still there. I do wish that my husband and I had a little more time just to ourselves. But we're saving up for a 2-of-us trip soon, so it's all going to work out. I always wondered why destination wedding couples want people there during their honeymoon. I didn't realize I was wearing my hair ties on my wrists until the pictures came back. Apparently there was delicious food. I should have tried some of the food. Instead I was drunk on adrenaline. I was so happy with everything. You can't believe it. Next day I was exhausted. So worth it. Allowing my sister-in-law to be a bridesmaid. She shouted at me and made me cry as I was putting my dress on. Yikes, that's really trashy. Sorry she did that to you. We wanted a tiny wedding. Immediate family and close friends only. My mom invited her siblings and my spouse's deceased father's siblings. We were too polite to uninvite them. So the group was lopsided enough that the toasts were 80% about my spouse. My boss, who didn't know me that well, noticed the disparity and made a toast about me. The whole thing ended up looking like it was my spouse's wedding, and I'd been invited to attend. Still had an awesome time, though. AWW, your boss sounds like a really sweet person, looking out for you. My stepsister got engaged at my wedding reception, and I didn't punch her or her fiancé for it later. Apparently the two of them arranged the whole thing together, that he would pop the question halfway through the daddy-daughter dance. Their marriage lasted all of 2 years, as well. That's literally the trashiest thing in the world. I have a friend that I'm inviting to basically deal with anything that happens like that, by which I mean offenders will be ejected, and possibly peed on, knowing him. Buying the suit I wore. As a groom I rented and nothing fit right. All of my pictures showed. As much as my wife spent on her dress I could have spent the $500 to buy the perfect fitting suit. Really short-sighted on my part. I was in my friend's wedding and he had us buy our suit. I was mad at first since I paid for his rental for my wedding since he was still in school. Best $500 I have spent. Still have the suit 3 years later and it has gotten me 2 jobs, through a few funerals, and at least a dozen weddings. My mother, she ruined it. Both my husband and I hated our wedding because she took over and did everything and then acted like she was doing us a wonderful favor. We didn't get to choose anything or do anything for it. I completely regret not putting my foot down and doing what I wanted. Not getting around to all of the tables. There were 2 tables we missed BC my so didn't want to go around during dinner. Still feel bad about it. Also, I wish we had dimmed the lights more during dancing. We didn't get a lighting so they left the lights somewhat high and I feel like people didn't dance as much because they felt like everyone was watching. I've read online that this is a pretty common problem. If you have a unity candle, light the wick before the actual ceremony. My wife and I awkwardly tried to light ours for like 3 minutes while her family member was singing a song. We eventually just tilted our individual lit candles until they were leaning on each other and making one flame out of the 2 wicks. The crowd cheered. Lighting the single candle with both other candles actually sounds really nice. We had a groom's cake. It was in the shape of a SNES. It was all kinds of chocolate. It was very delicious at the tasting. It was gone before I was able to get a piece even though the dang thing was named after me. Frick all of you bastards for eating my cake. Letting my mother steamroller about so much stuff. The main one, though, was when she told us that if we spent more than 15 minutes having photos taken, our guests would get bored waiting. So we literally had 15 minutes for photos after the ceremony. We've been married for 4 years and I could still kick myself for listening to her about that. I think doing the service on the river walk instead of in the chapel would have been much prettier, especially in the pictures. It seemed chilly, though, so we did the service indoors. I really regret that decision and think I'll have to marry her again and do it right this time. Inviting a certain family member. My mother died a few weeks before the wedding. We'd moved it as close as we could, and with the stress of her being ill I couldn't cope with my grandmother moaning that we hadn't invited these family members. Well, they showed up. After handing the RSVP to me at my mother's funeral while they were loading the coffin into the hearse, they ate food from everyone else's plates, sit down dinner, and they minuswept the food of people they'd never met before. Took and ate an entire tear of wedding cake and then kept getting the DJ to play naff love songs dedicated to each other rather than the playlist we'd requested. It wasn't the worst behavior I'd ever seen from them at a wedding, but it was definitely the worst behavior at my wedding. Should have made it clear to the DJ no requests. I made that stipulation with our DJ and he followed it. We put a line for a song request on our RSVP so guests could make requests there, but we had the final say on songs. We eloped in Hawaii. An unlimited amount of people were able to watch through a webcam and I still get compliments on it many years later. It also saved us a ton of money, headaches and arguments. This came after 2 months of planning a real wedding and saying frick it, there's gotta be a better way. I think I would have done my hair a little different, and I wouldn't have vetoed the Hawaiian shirt he wanted instead of the button-up we went with. That's about it. Not banning cell phones from the ceremony. I only had 30 guests, but every pic of us at the altar has a cell phone in the air. I paid for professional pictures. I will send you some of you ask. Don't ruin all my pics with your stupid iPhone. Yikes, I've heard this one a lot actually. Even worse, actually, is the people who have those red-orange light rangefinder red dye reduction lights. The phones can be edited a bit, dimmed down, cropping tricks, but that slow fade from good color to washed out red makes an image completely worthless. My regret is not taking the time out to enjoy myself. Both my wife and I spent a lot of time going around and talking to people, making sure we got through everyone and not missing anyone out, and doing things to make sure everyone felt included. Since then, we've found out that everyone was super happy and we didn't need to spend that time seemingly appeasing everybody. We both regret not taking a bit of time out and just enjoying ourselves with our immediate friends. We're desperate to go to another wedding at the same venue as guests, so we can get the experience we created for ours. The fact that my parents cancelled their lifetime goal of a trip to Scotland to be there. They didn't tell us until afterwards and we felt so guilty. The worst part? Shortly after that my mom was diagnosed with Parkinson's. It has progressed very quickly and now they will never be able to go. My birthday is Halloween and our wedding date is mid-November. We went to Vegas and stayed at the Mandalay Bay Hotel for my Halloween birthday and blow off some pre-wedding steam. We got way too drunk and ending up getting married early. We got married at the Mandalay Bay Hotel and got free tickets to the Shark Tank there. There is a picture of us, completed wasted, in a Halloween costume, holding up our marriage certificate with a shark behind us. Cost $150. We vow to never tell a soul. That picture and our real marriage certificate is hidden in a picture frame behind our fake certificate and picture. Our November wedding was a mess. People were getting drunk, making remarks about how I was going to get laid that night. My mother-in-law was my mother-in-law and embarrassed the heck out of us. My nephew was barely a year old and walking like a drunk. We were pulled apart from each other the whole day. Half of those dingbats left after we served cake. One woman was digging for gold in her nose when we said our vows cost $5,000 plus. You don't have to go out all 9 yards for these people. It is your day. Remember it. If you want to get drunk, get married in Mandalay Bay, and see some sharks, you do you. Who cares if your great aunt Kathy wants a family event with everyone with rose gold colors? Great aunt Kathy isn't getting married, you are. If you want sharks, go get sharks. If it's a decent sized wedding, it's very hard to spend enough time with your valued guests. Make sure to at least say something to convey your heartfelt appreciation of them for enjoying that special day with you, especially if any of them traveled to attend. We had a pretty small wedding, less than 50 guests, just family and very close friends, and didn't go crayon spending. The only regret I have is that I did not eat more at the reception, and barely got any of my cake. By the time we got to the hotel that night we were both starving. That was my wife. We ended up ordering her a pizza up to our room after it all. I wish we had just eloped and did it in Vegas. Both my parents and my mill acted like asses. We had a very small wedding and the reception at my parents' house, but my mom insisted on putting the food in the basement. I still have no idea why, and my mill was hysterical because she had to drive our car to her hotel. It was 8 miles away. We are about to celebrate our 21st anniversary. We got some letter blocks, beads, and pipe cleaner so people could put their name on their glass stemware if they wanted to. Then we forgot about it and they didn't get used. From time to time I see the bags of letters and think we should have a drunken party. Why not put them to good use? I planned our wedding in Boston from Atlanta, so I relied heavily on recommendations from friends, etc. for vendors. The one thing I regret was finding the photographer online versus getting a recommendation. 95% of our photos were pretty awful and took about 6 months to get because the photographer was going through major life-altering events you wouldn't understand, so yeah. My husband still grumbles about it to this day, 9 years later, but I see his point. That we didn't specifically say no children on the invite. We didn't know anyone with kids, so it seemed like a given. Mum though, invited her neighbor's son, who neither I nor the groom had ever met, and he brought his 2-year-old twins, who screamed through the entire ceremony. Don't make this mistake, folks. Other mistake to not make: letting your mother invite people to your wedding. Inviting my father. He showed up late and missed our arrival. As he consumed more alcohol, he proceeded to bring up old family crap in front of other people, which was not appropriate and made them feel awkward. To finish the night, he got absolutely hammered and lost his balance while dancing and fell over on the bridegroom table. He destroyed our unity candles among other items. Total horror show. 1. Not hitting my weight loss goal. 2. Since my wife and I got married on the cheap, we tried to invite as few people as possible. Looking back, I wish we had invited a few other extended family members. The original venue we picked was destroyed by a hurricane a few days before the wedding was supposed to happen. 5 years later we haven't gotten any of that money back, so yeah, I regret choosing them pretty bad. I forgot about how we would get back to our hotel after the wedding. Completely slipped my mind, so we had to get a lift with a few family friends. Only regret in an absolutely amazing day. About the wedding, not a dang thing. My husband's mom kept trying to push me into having a big wedding in a fancy venue with hundreds of people, and just the thought of it was stressing me out until I said, frick it. I ended up having a tiny ceremony in a friend's backyard. We had a potluck dinner, lots of beer, only like 25 people were there. It was perfect. The honeymoon, however, on our way to Florida, a big chunk of scrap metal flew off a semi-truck in front of us and went under the car. It tore up the transmission, the oil pan, the axle. The whole underside of the car was shredded. We ended up having to change half our plans, spend tons of money on car repairs and rental cars, and it was an unmitigated disaster. So that, I would change. That's both terrifying and sad. I'm glad you were both okay enough to be able to change those plans. allowing my husband to bully me into having his ex-girlfriend as a bridesmaid. They hooked up within 2 weeks after the wedding. He is an ex-husband now and she is on her 4th husband. To save money, we had friends do everything. The string quartet, the flowers, the officiant, the videography and photography. Everything was awesome, except the photography. He was my friend's dad, a successful dermatologist and amateur photographer. Anyhow, this was the early days of Photoshop and a hard drive crash wiped him out. I'm not mad 15 years later, but he was so embarrassed, he never spoke with me again. Yep, I had a friend do my photos, and ended up with maybe 5 photos that I actually like from my wedding. Dang near everything but the pictures is temporary. Spend your money on the things that are permanent. I wish we would have given ourselves a bigger photography budget. I also wish I would have followed my heart and gone with a way cooler, less traditional dress. My dad gave me away at my first very small wedding, which meant the world to me. After much physical and emotional abuse, that marriage ended. I eloped to the courthouse for the second since everyone lived far away and I had 3 children from my first marriage that needed to be provided for more than I needed a wedding. The gifted bouquet was fabulous. I was marrying my best friend. My children were in attendance and they gave their full approval. It really was great. My only regret is I never got to have a wedding dance with my dad. The dance was the only part I dreamed about as a little girl because my dad would dance me around the house while I stood on his feet. We'd waltz like you'd see in movies when people got married and I wanted that with my dad. I wouldn't have stood on his feet, of course. Next time I go home I'm standing that old man up and we're gonna waltz. Damn it. Just like we used to. I'll go Goodwill a wedding dress if I'm feeling sassy about it. 2 things. I got married in a hotel. The stereo that was to play our aisle music was quiet. I didn't realize how quiet until my wife walked down the aisle to near silence. I could have called her to ask to bring our louder stereo, but I was too paranoid about it being bad luck to see or speak to each other on the morning of the wedding. The second was that the hotel provided a lovely chocolate fountain. I forgot we had it until the day after, so didn't even try it. 2 very minor issues that didn't really spoil the perfect day. My wife regrets not getting a videographer to capture some of the moments, and I regret trying to pull off a gag when I did the garter throw. It took too long and she got kind of embarrassed by it. We didn't have our personal effects packed up after the wedding, so instead of dashing off to the hotel, we sat in the car for an hour waiting for the bridesmaids and groomsmen to find all of our stuff. 0/10, would never recommend. Having a ceremony. My mill invited so many people that my so and I had never met and have never seen again, and my Phil did a surprise champagne toast that caused the amount of the wedding to go up because he wanted to be the center of attention. It also caused family drama on my side since I didn't want to invite my cousin and her ill-behaved children who everyone called scum, but then shame on me for not wanting them there. Having a wedding taught me that despite everyone telling you it's about you, it's not about you. If we ever had to do it again, we'd just go to the courthouse and call it done. Wish I would have checked the calendar before scheduling it. Did not realize it was ahead of a 3-day weekend. Could have planned a trip to Vegas or something. I was pregnant, but just enough to look fat. I really wish we'd waited until after we had her. Oh well, going on 10 years now. You have been visited by the strong skeleton. He wants you to like this video and have a good week. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.